The truth about Mary is that she was a priestess. She was trained in Egypt. You're all smiling because you all feel this, don't you? She was trained under the secret doctrine of Isis, the great goddess of Egypt, into the secret doctrine of sacred priestess work. She was a fully initiated priestess, and she and Jesus also trained in Egypt together as young people, and they underwent a sacred wedding ceremony of connection of the energies. This wedding ceremony, by the way, it's very important to recognize, especially given other books that are around. We won't mention what they are, but you all know the one I mean, where it talks about this holy bloodline. This was a misunderstanding of what exactly Jesus and Mary were doing. Because let's face it, even if there was a bloodline, which I'm not going to go into, it'd be so diluted after 2,000 years, we're all related to them. Do you see what I mean? So what does it mean? It means nothing, does it? No, it is a spirit line. This is the sacred spirit line that goes through body after body, not bloodline. And so is misunderstood, given the medieval attitude of the right of kings to rule, and the bloodline of King David and so forth. So they misunderstood all of those things. No, the truth was, it's a soul line, a spirit line. And this is what Jesus and Mary were trying to teach. Because it's very important for us always to remember that you are not a body. You are a spirit who's having a temporary body experience. This is your temple at the moment, but it won't always be. You know that. It's not, nobody's saying, oh, really? You know this. And it is your soul that lives on, clearly not your body. So when we talk about the eternal you, we're not talking about the physical. We're talking about the spiritual. And your body moves on lifetime after lifetime, hopefully evolving upward towards that Christ consciousness. And so we come into this earth school looking towards that evolution, and we can find the masculine component very easily. But the feminine component has pretty much been pushed underground, and some would say destroyed, but it can't be destroyed. It's not possible to be destroyed. So what happened with Mary's story is it became a secret story. But a secret story in plain sight, I might add. Because some of you will be familiar with the Templars, the Knights Templars and so forth. They went over to the Holy Land during the time of the Crusades. They dug up the sacred temples and they discovered again, rediscovered Mary, rediscovered the goddess, which is wonderful. And they took it back to Europe. But however, again, the church was so powerful that it hadn't had the ability to go around hanging and killing people, that they had to force it again underground. And what happened was the evolution of the wandering troubadours, minstrels, singers, songwriters. You all remember this if you've watched Robin Hood, or you'll understand this from the King Arthur stories. And the tales and the stories are Mary's stories put into tales. So one of the most famous stories that every single person knows, one of Mary's stories, Cinderella. You know the story of Cinderella? It's Mary's story. What happened to Mary? Down in the scullery scrubbing the floors. I think every woman can relate to that. Another story you all know, Snow White. You know the story of Snow White? You remember the story of Snow White? She was pure, she was innocent, and the wicked queen threw her into the forest and asked that she be killed. So she was taken into the forest, and she was condemned to die, poor Snow White. But what happened? The woodsman didn't have the heart to kill her, did he? So you'll notice in all of these stories, although Cinderella is forced to scrub the floors, poor Snow White is pushed into the woods, and Sleeping Beauty is put in a castle and put into a deep sleep. You can never kill the innocence which is inside of you. You can never kill the goddess. You can never kill the purity of the feminine. It can be pushed underground. It can be put to sleep for 100 years in a castle. It can be put in the woods and ignored. But it cannot be killed, and it's vital that we remember this. For within you lies this truth also. So the story of Snow White is a beautiful story. You remember in the woods she comes across 7 dwarves, 7 chakras, 7 energies. You know, originally the dwarves were just the colors of the rainbow. Now they're called sleepy, dozy, whatever. But originally in the ritual story they were the colors of the rainbow. What do you think that's all about? Also remember, they're miners. Do you remember this? They go hi-ho. They go to the mines. What to dig up? Crystals, gold, silver, the inner wisdom. Yes? So there is Snow White, a young girl, learning to become the goddess with the 7 dwarves, the 7 chakras, the inner crystals, the inner work, in the forest, in contemplation, in meditation. So there, the troubadours hid the story again of Mary. Do you see how they did this? And it's in many, I could go story after story, Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, again and again and again. Yes? The end of the story, the prince returns, always. Prince Charming kisses her awake. You know the stories. Okay? This is the Jesus energy returning to Mary and bringing it in unification, the male-female, out into the world for sharing. Isn't that wonderful? You see? And you knew the story of the goddess all along. And it's in the fairy stories. But of course, that wasn't enough. We need to now bring it to the higher vibration. And so, these stories that were hidden for so many years are now starting to be re-evaluated. Have you noticed the modern stories, such as Harry Potter, are all about boys and men? But the ancient stories, the hero is always a female. In all of them, you agree? She's always a princess who's overlooked, or thrown out, or told to wash the dishes, or she's disinherited, isn't she? You agree? That's the theme. Disinherited, forgotten, and mistreated. But the prince comes and rescues her, always in the end. And what we need to recognize is that story is our own inner story. And so the story of Mary was crushed for many years, but now we're in the 21st century, her story is coming again to the surface. So people like me, and I'm certainly not the only one who's connecting in with Mary Magdalene. Other writers are connecting in with the story. And I'm meeting them, or I'm seeing their books, and again, it's the same story. Written differently, of course, because we're all coming through our individual journey. But the same story comes up again and again and again, the story of Mary. Because now we're ready to look at the story directly. We no longer need Snow White. I mean, I love her to death, but you know what I mean. We no longer need to hide the story in Cinderella. We now need to look at the story directly. And this is what Mary told me as she came through. She said, it's time now to look at my story, my journey, so that women understand. You all know about archetypes. These are universal energies that work through the subconscious mind. We may not like archetypes. We may want to turn our back on them. But they work through us anyway because they work through the subconscious mind. The collective unconscious archetype of the goddess in the Western world at this time is that she's a wounded feminine energy. And so most women, as they step into their power, become wounded in some form or another. So many of you are nodding your heads. You know this is about self-sabotage. Yes, this is all about a powerful woman is often a lonely woman. Yes, you're nodding. That sometimes you have to choose between a relationship and being powerful. You have to choose. Men seem to have it easy from our point of view. They can have a wife and child and a support mechanism and go forth and be powerful. For a woman, you walk in and it's, where's my tea? And I'm hungry. And you haven't ironed my shirt. That's how it seems to us. I'm not attacking any men here, but you've got to understand that is the wounded feminine energy. What I want to say to all the women here is the reason that exists is because it's the archetype. And that although you may be married or in a relationship with the most gorgeous man, he will enact that archetype with you because you're plugged into it. You're plugged into that energy field. And even though consciously you don't want to live that way, it comes through the subconscious. So in order to overcome that archetype, it is required of us to liberate the inner Mary. And we can only do this consciously. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge. I think that's a Dr. Phil quote. You can't heal what you ignore. You know this. Even with a wound on your leg, you have to present it to the doctor so he can stitch you together. You can't pretend it's not there. Otherwise it festers. So you first have to acknowledge it. And again, this is why I've written the book. When you read my book, and this book is sold right across the country and is going overseas, most women tell me, this is why I'm like this. This is why this has happened. This is your story. Several people have asked me, are you an incarnation of Mary then? And I say, yes. Yes, I am. But so are you. So is every woman, whether she's conscious or not of this. And we see this in many, many public figures, such as Princess Diana. She had everything going for her, didn't she? She was a princess. She was beautiful. She was the right age. She produced male children, yes. But she lived the wounded female, did she not? She was never allowed to be powerful, you agree? Yes. It was constantly, the rug was pulled from under her feet. She was constantly stabbed in the back, yes? Why? Because it was the Mary Magdalene wound. She wasn't conscious of this. She probably didn't even know the story. She probably didn't feel she was even interested in Mary Magdalene. I mean, I don't know. But do you see how she lived that out? Another example is Princess Grace of Monaco. Again, a beautiful film star, married a prince. Perfect life. But everybody knew she wasn't happy. You could see that. Why? She was always the princess, never allowed to be queen. Just as Diana was never allowed to be queen. Always the princess, always the young woman, the little Snow White, never allowed to come into her full majesty. This is the case for us all women, as many of us have been forced into the princess role forever. And you know, have you noticed how princess is now a dirty word? It didn't used to be, did it? We say, oh, she's such a princess, don't we? Yes? Why? What is a princess? A spoilt little brat. Does that make sense? What is a queen? But a woman of power. And I think one of our most wonderful examples of that, of course, is our own queen. I'm not saying that she's the epitome of feminine power, but she is a beautiful symbol for many women of how power can be handled beautifully. Does that make sense? So this is the story of Mary asking us to come into that balance. So what is Mary's energy? Let's talk about that a little bit. When we refer to Mary's wisdom, it's often referred to as the Holy Grail. You've heard about the Holy Grail. We've had the quest for the Holy Grail, haven't we? Yes? The Holy Grail, of course, according to some books, is symbolic of the uterus. And that's true to a certain extent because the power of women does come through the reproduction system. But the Holy Grail of which we drink is the feminine wisdom. And we do this not by consciously taking hold of something, but allowing ourselves to become a reflection of that truth. By living the truth, by being the Holy Grail in our own lives, by being the healer in our own lives, by being with the feminine energy. But the problem is, it's been so many thousands of years, most women don't understand what feminine energy actually is, do we? Okay? We're taught, we come into this world where we've got to be assertive, where we have to go out there and make our lives work for ourselves, yes? And so feminine power is misunderstood.